My name is Omid Farokhzad. I'm a professor at Harvard Medical School in Boston. I'm also a director of the Center for Nanomedicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital. My research team is focused on developing a variety of nanotechnologies for medical applications, and this includes a drug delivery system for treatment of cancer, cardiovascular disease. We're developing novel vaccines. So my involvement with nanotechnology was actually an interesting one. I was initially trained as a molecular biologist. I'm a physician. I'd always been very interested in science, and throughout my undergraduate and medical education I pursued research, but mostly studying regulation of genes, elements that control the expression of genes, and these were genes involved in activation of leukocyte and start of inflammation. But then I did a postdoc at MIT in a chemical engineering lab, a lab run by Professor Robert Langer. And then I learned a totally different set of area. I learned about biomaterials, the use of these biomaterials for delivering drugs. And so I came into nanotech from a biological background, but you can come into it really from any background, chemistry, physics. And when I joined the Harvard faculty, and I had done my clinical training there before joining the faculty, when I joined the faculty there in 2004, I started a lab called the Lab of Nanomedicine and Biomaterials. And at the time, the first thing that I heard was, well, what is nanomedicine? And this is, just about 13 years ago. And fast forward, about 2 years ago, we started the Center for Nanomedicine. About a year ago, we moved into our new building. This center has 3 PIs that come into the field of nanomedicine from different perspectives and different areas of research. About 65 people in total across the 3 PIs. And also very translational in our focus, meaning that we develop a lot of nanotechnology in our academic labs, but the real focus is to impact human lives and to help patients. And so a lot of these technologies have come out of the academic labs and have then been commercialized through our industry colleagues and collaborators who then move these technologies forward into human clinical trials, and with the ultimate hope that these things will end up becoming drugs that can help patients. Sure, I would say my own group, which were about 25 people of the 65 people or so in the center, is heavily multidisciplinary. So we have biologists, and that includes molecular biologists. We have folks with pharmacology background, chemists, and this could be synthetic chemists, engineers, physicists, and if you look at our publications, typically a paper from our group will have many authors, and if you just look across those authors' lists, many disciplines would be represented. I think to do nanomedicine research really well, you need to have access to a variety of expertise. And by the way, that also includes clinical medicine. Now, while I trained as a physician, I actually don't see patients 100% of my time in science. So we actually leverage our access within the Harvard Medical School community to tap into clinical expertise. And many of our papers also have clinical experts on them as well. Certainly the ones that are directionally moved forward and likely to be translated, then those expertise become more relevant. But the conclusion, though, is that it's really difficult to be involved in nanomedicine and have a myopic view of your own discipline. You really have to look across this spectrum of a variety of expertise in science and be able to aggregate it in solving problems that are very difficult to solve with a single discipline. I would say that whenever you are able to bring different set of expertise to the table to solve a problem, you do two things. One, you probably increase your odds of success. And two, you probably make the slope of success sharper, meaning you're accomplishing more in less time. And I would say we're now seeing across many academic centers where this convergence is happening. Now, as I mentioned, I did my postdoctoral training at MIT, and MIT Cancer Center, which is now called the Koch Institute, is basically a building that is populated by engineers and biologists in the same building. And now, while that dramatic convergence isn't broadly, universally everywhere, we're seeing that type of representation more and more becoming commonplace. And within the Harvard Medical School area, the newly established Fisk Institute is a good example where it's basically an aggregation of chemists, engineers, and also biologists and physicians all under the same roof. And I think the value add to patients, ultimately to patients, is huge when we look at the problem and solve it, or approach to solve it with a multidisciplinary perspective. Our current focus is really twofold. One is that we want to understand increasingly what is the biological implication of having a nanotechnology system in the body. And we want to increase our IQ in that area. Now, if you just go back in time, 15 or 20 years ago, we were developing systems and pushing them in animals and then ultimately into patients. But our level of understanding of, well, how does the body really interact with that system was limited. But what we're seeing now in the last decade is that there's been an enormous increase of interest in the community in that area, and our lab is one of the ones that has become progressively more interested in that area. So that is one aspect of our work. And the other part of it is that we're also recognizing that the physiological barrier to the success of these nanotechnology systems is quite high. And so we're increasingly trying to develop responsive nanotechnologies, systems that can adopt themselves in the human body, specifically designed to overcome physiologic barriers that they may encounter from the time of administration until they reach their ultimate target site and do the ultimate biological readout that is desirable to us. And so those responsive systems are another area that we're particularly focused on. And then I say, you know, and the rest of the group is still focused on the just a variety of approaches to deliver drugs or deliver different classes of therapeutics like RNA therapeutics, biologic therapeutics, and also nanotechnology for oral delivery. So just really a broad spectrum of problems that we aim to solve. I think if you look at the impact of nanotechnology for treatment of cancer, it's unfair to have a short-term view. And so my own perspective has always been a 20-year, 30-year perspective, and not a 1 or 2 or 3 year or a 5-year perspective. And the reason is, if we just look back at, you know, some of the other technologies that have made a big impact on human lives today, and let's just take one as an example, which is the biologics as a class of therapeutics. If you look at just antibody drugs, between 1980 and 1990, there was a massive increase in a number of publications that were coming out on an annual basis related to antibodies. And it wasn't until 6 years later that really an important antibody drug, Rituxan, got approved, and then fast forward some 25, 30 years later, biologics now as a class represents about $140 billion market for pharma and biotech, with numerous important drugs that are saving lives of cancer patients and patients with inflammatory conditions and beyond. But the impact of biologic didn't become clear in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or even 10 years. It really took 30 or 40 years from where the field started to where the impact was tangible and one could really put their finger on major successes that were from biologics. So my prediction for you isn't what happens in nanotech and medicine and cancer, say 5 years from now. My prediction is whoever comes and speaks the way I'm talking now about cancer and nanotech 20 or 30 years from now, my prediction is that individual will be able to put their finger on numerous examples of drugs that are making a material impact on the lives of patients. And in fact, I will put myself on an edge and say that my prediction is that the impact of nanotechnology on healthcare will probably dwarf what we saw in biologics if you just give it time. Well, first of all, I'm so impressed by the level of interest that I'm seeing among the faculty and the students, and also government leadership in the interest in nanomedicine and nanotechnology within Argentina. I think anytime you start, the path forward is a challenge. You certainly need to walk before you run. I think the key is always training the best human capital, the best students, and the best trainees. And then you need successes commercially in order to then take these newly trained, newly educated nanomedicine individuals and put them in jobs. And so there has to then be infrastructure to support cultivating new biotechs that are based on nanotechnology and to support these companies to become successful, because the success of these companies will then fuel the success of the next generation of scientists, industry scientists, that can then collaborate with more academics and develop new technologies and new companies. And these things are all easier said than done. I mean, to create an ecosystem of innovation needs all the stakeholders to be involved. The investment community needs to be on the table. The policies and regulatory agencies need to all be rowing in the same direction. And then the academic entities need to make investment in those scientific areas. But I think it's wonderful to see that there's so much enthusiasm across the individuals that I've met in my trip in this field. Well, for my visit here, and by the way, which is the same as my visits in most other places that I go, is that I hope we create new bonds and new links that can, serve as a bridge for collaborations. But these collaborations can't be forced. I mean, they have to be organic. But certainly students coming and going. I mean, there's many examples of these trips resulting in new postdocs coming to the lab and new collaborations forming. And so that to me is the ultimate success. But even if you just take a fraction of that, and if it just means that, that I met a few people here and I shared our science and maybe it inspired a couple of students, I consider that a lot of success as well.